All right, it is 2:15, so I'll get us started. Hello, everyone. My name is Chrissy O'Grady, and I am the session moderator. Welcome to the session Exploring Untold Stories in an Information Literacy Class, an Introduction to Primary Sources, presented by Madeline Ruggiero. Madeline is an assistant professor and collection development librarian at Queensborough Community College. She is a first-generation college student raised by Italian immigrants and has a dual citizenship with Italy. She holds a BA in art history from Syracuse University, an MA in art history from Stony Brook University, and an MLS from Pratt Institute. So before Madeline begins her presentation, I just need to go over a few things. First, the session is being recorded. Second, please remain muted unless invited to speak or during discussion times. And third, please put your questions and comments in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat throughout the session. Madeline, take it away when you are ready.
Okay, thanks. I'll take questions at the end. So thanks for coming to this session on analyzing family primary sources. And this is a granular look at a book chapter that will be published this coming winter by ACRL. And let's see, this is the name of the book. It's the Community College Library Reference and Instruction. And the title is Untold Stories, Analyzing Family Primary Sources. And so why am I talking about family primary sources? Because it allows students to engage in topics of value, relevance, and meaning, serves as a motivator for learning and exploring global issues. In other words, when students care about what they're learning about, they're more engaged and motivated to do the work. And also the demographics of Queensborough Community College is predominantly Latinx, and so there are a lot of immigrants at our school. And also because I'm a librarian and I do one-shots according to I teach to the assignment, the topic of immigration was part of this English assignment for this English class that I was teaching. And I turned it into a flipped or inverted information literacy classroom to allow for active learning to take place in the classroom. So this was the inspiration for the assignment. The English class was required to read this book, Spare Parts, which was published in 2014. It's actually based on a true story about undocumented immigrants, undocumented teenagers that are living in Arizona, and they get together and they enter a robotics contest, and because they don't have money, they build their robot out of spare parts and they end up winning. It's actually based on true story. So the students had to read this book, and then I introduced this movie. Actually, the movie, Spare Parts is also a movie, which was done in 2015. The movie I introduced was Dirt, which is directed by Nancy Savoca in 2003, and you cannot find this movie. So it's based on undocumented immigrant from the adult perspective of a woman living in Queens, New York, from El Salvador, and she works as a housemaid in New York City. The names that you see here, Richard Quay is the director's husband, and he's also a producer who produced the movie. And Jerry Carlson is a film professor at City University, and he also helped produce the movie. Now, I received a free copy of this movie from Jerry. Now, the reason I'm showing you their emails is because they have told me, and actually I conversed with them this morning, they have told me that anyone who wants a copy of this movie, because you can't get it anywhere, is welcome to email them, and they'll give you a free copy for educational purposes. And it's fiction, but it's based on a woman from El Salvador that is working that lives in Queens, New York, and working as a domestic in the Upper East Side and how she's treated. And so I thought that went very well with the book Spare Parts, so that students had a choice of either. First of all, I made this film into a campus-wide screening. This was the flyer for the screening, which happened in October of 2019, and we had 50 people coming to the event. And in addition, Nancy Savoca showed up, as well as Jerry and her husband Richard, which was a real treat for the audience to actually do a Q&A with the director of the film. It was really special. And these guys are really, really, really nice guys. And if you ask, they would probably come and do something at your school as well. And the students really enjoyed it. So they had a choice of, they had to read the book, and then there was this screening of the movie, and the English professor, also embedded the film into her class. So students had two perspectives of the undocumented immigrant experience. They had the perspectives of the students in the book, because it's very different living as an undocumented immigrant if you're a teenager than when you're an adult, right? And then in the movie Dirt, they had the perspective of what it's like to be undocumented in this country as an adult and working. So how I approached the assignment was that I used my own family primary sources to transition into analyzing the material. Since I myself come from a family of immigrants, my family has a whole story, and I used some of the documents from my father that he had when he came to this country, and tried to find work. And I'll show you those in a second. And then I also used worksheets that helped students to examine and interpret their genre of material from the National Archives. So the questions that the students were to ask their family before they came to my class: where were you born and raised? What kind of work did you do when I was growing up? And what is your greatest accomplishment? I wanted these questions to provide opportunities to give accounts of family struggles as well as family achievements, so students didn't dwell on a deficit way of viewing their culture. And so I showed the students in my class, when they came to the library session, I spoke to them a bit about primary sources and defining what primary sources were. And then I showed them a document from my father. It was a letter when it was all written in Italian, when he was establishing residency in the United States, and he was a furniture worker, and this was his union booklet. So I started I was trying to get a rapport with the students to make them feel comfortable. So that's why I showed them my primary sources first, and then we went into theirs. So I broke the students up into pairs, so that it was like a think, write, pair, share collaboration, so that they could even sort of interview each other about the relative that they spoke, that they found information on. And then they engaged with a worksheet from the National Archives, which is online. And the worksheet asks students to take a deeper look into what they're looking at. So for example, if they brought in an object, if they brought in a document, or even if it was oral history, and then it asked them questions according to the genre. So here's an example. So if students had a photograph, they would click on this and then answer questions dealing with the photograph. For a written document, this is what it looked like. Analyze a written document. The students would interact with these questions, and then they would discuss with each other. Now, if students didn't want to do their family members, because I did have 2 students who didn't want to do that, then I asked them to do their neighborhood, to interview people in their neighborhood. Okay, so that's, so now I'm going to take you to my LibGuide that I created for the students. So I created a guide so that the students could look at sources that would allow them to verify history. And I created a LibGuide called Queen's History as World History. As you see, the immigration population has really changed. After World War II, immigration slowed, but a new boom of immigrants from Asia and Latin America began in the 60s and has continued to grow. The percentage of immigrants is back up to the peak proportion seen in the 1920s, as you can see here. So it's a lot of Latin Americans, a lot of Asians, we have Africa. And so I'm just showing you one of the sources that I have in the LibGuide, which is a wiki research source of family history, so that they can, it's a Wikipedia page, and there's a link to it in my guide actually, and they can go to any part of the country here, and they can click on it in their questions and articles. So the guide is used as a way to create context for historical sources. So history becomes meaningful for students only when they personally engaged in determining what that evidence reveals. So why use this LibGuide that I created? It provides resources to inspire inquiry-based learning. It teaches historical methods and thinking. It teaches research and digital literacy skills. It allows the students to engage with archives and primary sources. It encourages contribution to an open repository. As you'll see, there's a Queens Public Library has a oral history repository where students can actually contribute oral histories, even about the coronavirus. And it's really all about historical thinking. So I want the students to engage in the Family History Project and sort of see how historical thinking works, sort of be a historian and consider if the story is true by interacting with these sources. And so they're sourcing, they're contextualizing, they're using background knowledge, they're reading the silences, identify what has been left out or is missing from the document by asking questions of its account where it is not verifiable because there aren't any records. Such as the census, because there's no census before 1940. The significance of recording family oral history is documenting today for tomorrow, represent the multicultural perspective of the community. And then here is the guide is right here, the LibGuide that I created. So before I wanted to put you into breakout rooms so that you can discuss how you might use some of these sources from my LibGuide, Queen's History as World History. And actually, let's go into this guide and have a look at it first. So this is the guide. And then I wrote what the goals are here. And here's the digital historical. This digital historical resource, it's just a compilation of sources that I took from St. John's University. And there's a lot here. I especially like the teacher created assignments that are here that you can interact with. I found those useful. So there's a lot here to go through. Let's see, then we have the Queen's Memory, as I was talking about, for the Queen's Public Library. And so you can contribute to their archives. It's telling you how to contribute to Queen's Memory. Let's see, open another link. So you can actually interact and see full interviews of oral history that people have contributed, and the students can contribute themselves as well. And then there was some Jstor open sources. These are all open sources on here that I found and that students were able to explore. So you can just look through some of these. And then the book, the common read this year was George Takei's They Call Us Enemy. So I wanted to reflect the Japanese internment camps. And so that's why I put this in here. And then material culture. There's a link to the Heinz Museum in Pittsburgh, which has exhibits on material culture. So objects, right? Objects that tell about people's lives and history. And I know that there's a big Italian section in here of Italian objects. And then this is just about open license and copyright. So I wanted to put you in a 10-minute breakout room, about, I don't know how many, 3 people to each breakout room maybe. And so that you can interact with this LibGuide, which will be put in the chat, and consider how might you use some of these sources from the LibGuide, Queen's History as World History. And can you put the link in the chat for these folks?
Yep, it's there.
Okay. All right. So then if you can put them in a breakout room, and then we'll be back in 10 minutes, and then you can report what you discussed about how you might use some of these sources in your classes.
Madeline, I'm not sure if you know, but you're muted right now.
No, sorry, I didn't know that. Does anybody want to share anything that they talked about in their groups, in their rooms? Does anybody have any use for this? For the LibGuide?
Hi, I just put in the email address of Sal Legumina, who does Italian Heritage Day every year. So if anybody wanted to contact him regarding doing any kind of a speech for Italian Heritage Day, he has the Yahoo address there.
Okay, that's great. Anybody have any questions about or comments about anything you spoke about?
I just want to say that I think that's a wonderful LibGuide. It's a wonderful resource, and I'm definitely going to make use of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of information there. So it's hard to look at everything all at once in 10 minutes.
Hi, this is Megan. I'm from Farmingdale State College. And I just want to add that I used to have a position as a local history and genealogy librarian at New York Public Library. And some of these resources can actually be used in ways that you might not have originally thought of, because we had a photography class that would visit the library every semester, and they would use family history resources as an inspiration for their photography projects. So I really feel like it can be used in so many different ways.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you.
The document analysis worksheets, linking to that, it was the first time I come across that for analyzing primary sources, and those are great. That's something that either can be just literally used right out the door, or somehow modified slightly to fit a particular class. I mean, those are great to share.
Yeah, when I did the class, it was a nice way to get them to collaborate, to work together, was to work on those sheets, and even ask each other about the person that they had interviewed based on questions on those sheets as a guide. There was something I wanted to go over here that I didn't before. Let me just talk a little more about the assignment. When the students, because the assignment was a little more involved than what I actually spoke about, when the students were given the assignment to look at either read the book and to engage with the movie, before they did that, they were given reflection prompts that had nothing to do with the movie or the book, just to kind of gauge their learning and if their transformation. So some of these reflection prompts that I came up with, so the reason, first of all, the reason for using reflection prompts, the reflection prompts call for the formulation of personal perspectives in response to storylines and connect students to their beliefs, values, and/or bias. Questions are designed to help students think about global issues, develop prompts to analyze arguments or scenarios to invite diverse viewpoints, measure their learning or transformation after the assignment is complete. That's the most important reason to use reflection prompts. So these were some of the questions that I came up with. So they had to answer, I think, 3 out of the 8. The first one, an undocumented immigrant, this is before they engage with the book or the movie. An undocumented immigrant child grows up in the United States. He enlists in the Navy. Do you think he should have a path to citizenship? Why? Imagine you learn that one of your classmates is an undocumented immigrant. How does knowing your classmate is not here legally make you feel? Explain. One of the workers at the local meat packing plant is an undocumented immigrant working under a fake social security number. He gets coronavirus. Should he get paid for sick leave? Explain. Who should pay his hospital bills? So the students had to engage with those. And then they read the book and they saw the movie and they had a paper to write. This was from the English teacher had them write a paper based on the characters in the movie and the characters in the book. And then they were asked the same questions again. So this was their assignment, and this was just something that they had to do in their paper. Demonstrate the similarities or differences of the event or struggle revealed to you by your primary source to what the characters in the book or movie experienced. Choose 2 secondary sources, articles from the library's database to back up your findings. Select articles that provide information you can use to support your viewpoint. Then they went back to the reflection prompt, and then you were able to gauge, or the English teacher was able to gauge how much they had learned. So it was a really nice assignment. And then I kept up with, because it was a flipped class, I kept up with the English professor, and she told me what the results were, which a lot of them had learned a lot, and a lot of what they answered had changed, and so there was a big transformation. So it helps to use reflection prompts. And that was the entirety of the assignment. So it connected, this is how it connected with the book and the movie. Any questions? So I'm going to make sure that you get copies of these. I think I have 4. I have the 2 slide presentations that I gave, and then this is a more in-depth slide presentation that has the reflection prompts in it. Questions on anything? Thoughts on anything?
I don't see any questions so far in the chat, but I know I'm excited to share the Queen's Memory website and contribution with my family, who is also from Queens.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I was telling people in the breakout room that I was in that the Heinz Museum, which is a material culture museum, they they're collecting objects. If you go on their site, you'll see collecting objects from the coronavirus or from the period of the pandemic. And they also have Italian material culture in their collection as well. They're located in Pittsburgh.
Well, we have until 3:15 for questions or comments. So if anyone does have questions, feel free to hop on the mic or put it in the chat, and Madeline can answer.
The nice thing about this assignment is if you have students looking at their own culture, examining their own culture, they gain a sense of, they're more likely to gain a sense of empathy towards others, and tolerance towards others or towards people of, differing cultures. But first they have to look at themselves. I mean, that's just the way it works. And do reach out to Jerry and Richard if you would like a copy of that movie Dirt, because you can't get it anywhere. And they're very nice and they're very accommodating. And who knows, they may even want, offer to do a question and answer with the director, because Nancy Savoca lives in New York City. She's done other independent films. You can Google her and see. But they're very nice guys, and it's nice to have this movie in your collection.
So we do have a question in the chat from Lisa. What activities did you have students do before the in-class session?
Okay, so they in their English class, they had the questions to interact with on what to ask their relatives or their neighbors. So I had them gather their primary sources, so that when they came to class, they had their primary sources with them and they could actually interact with the primary sources and the worksheets. So that's what I had them do before they came to class. And like I said, if they didn't want to interact with their family, they could always do their neighborhood, someone in their neighborhood. There were 2 that didn't want to for whatever reason. And they didn't have to be objects or documents. They could be, there was oral history also, like interviewing a grandmother or something like that. Any other questions? So basically it was an assignment that I added an addition to. I thought, let's expand the assignment. The English professor came to me and said, I'd like an information literacy class. The students need to find sources on this book. They've read this book, they need to find sources to verify what the characters' experiences were in this book. And then I added the movie because I thought that would fit in quite nicely, because the movie gives you an adult perspective of undocumented immigrants, while the book gives you a teenage perspective, a school perspective. And that's how the assignment was expanded. And then I offered the screen-wide, the screening of the movie Dirt.
We have another question in the chat from Zachary. Have you or the students found any specific digitized newspapers to be helpful in the learning process for the assignment?
Digitized newspapers. I didn't come across any. No, I haven't. That didn't come up. I don't know if there are any in my LibGuide. I don't think so. You know, and it's important to establish a rapport with the students. So that's why I showed some of my family primary sources, just so they would feel comfortable. And that's where this came in. And it's funny because when I showed them this, it generated a lot of discussion, you know, and they were interested in what my father did, why he was in Michigan, because he went to Michigan because it was the furniture capital of the world, and he made furniture. He was 49, he didn't speak English, you know, they were just interested in all of that. So it got them talking. Questions? And this is a really good source, this National Archives document. For the person I don't know if the person is still there, the person who said that she could see many ways that this could be used, can you tell me one of the ways that the guide could be used? Or maybe the person left.
I do not remember who said that. So
Yeah,
I can't help.
It was somebody who worked in the archives or something like that. I don't know. And the book will be out in, I think they told me this winter, the book will be out that has this chapter in it.
So someone put in the chat that they're not the person who said that, but they could use it with Appalachian Studies and art students.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you expand on that if you want?
And Lisa, if you feel comfortable getting on the mic, you can also do that.
Sure. Well, really, I thought the document analysis worksheets would be really great for our Appalachian Studies class students. So I'm in Radford, Virginia, not New York, but we often have students look through our archives for a piece of like coal mining history and identify an artifact. And so I could see using those with that, and then art students for their different projects.
Oh, that's good. Thanks. Thanks for
Sure.
sharing that.
I was also thinking about ways that I could use this. I run a digital history internship where we create Omeka sites, and the students are able to select their own projects. And I was thinking, wow, this would have been useful when one of the students wanted to do oral histories to have some of those resources available, and I could easily sort of point them to your guide. So I'll keep it handy for students who will be doing the internship in the semester, in the upcoming semester.
That would be helpful, yeah. Does anybody think they'll ask for a free copy of the movie? The movie Dirt? It would be a nice addition to the collection, I think, because you can't find it anywhere for whatever reason. Are people familiar with the book Spare Parts?
It seems like most people are not. I'm also not familiar with it.
You're not? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's based on a true story. Nobody has any questions or thoughts?
It doesn't look like there's any other questions or comments in the chat.
Okay.
Madeline, thank you very much. I'm going to record the links that you sent in the chat, and we'll make sure those are attached to the recording in YouTube. Did you have anything else?
No, that I wanted to say. No, just that I think it's important to engage, well, I already said that, to engage students in, learning about their culture. That's about it.
All right. Thank you for sharing your expertise, and we look forward to seeing your book chapter published.